Hello friends, welcome back. Today I am going to start 8th module of this course, that is communication. This is a very important module of this course because without communication, proper and meaningful communication, organization cannot withstand any competition, any emergency, even the functioning of the organization. So, it plays very important role in organizational behavior, and OB professionals have focused communication in different forms, that how communication tends to traverse in any organization from different channels, what is the process of communication, how people tend to receive and interpret that message in different forms, how any communication is being interpreted based on the body language, based on formal and informal communication, and types of communication that exist in any organization based on the structure. So, before getting more into details, I will start this module with the basic definition that what is communication, what exactly it deals with. When we talk about this term, as a layman perspective, we say the way we communicate, the way we speak, the way we interact with the other person. But actually, when it comes to defining communication, it is actually interchange of information and knowledge to foster mutual understanding and trust. As a layman, we say we have just shared the information and the communication is over. But from the OB professional's point of view, when that exchange takes place, that the objective of any communication should be not only to just communicate the message, but to what extent the other person is able to understand, we need to have that kind of communication. So, whenever we are communicating in terms of exchanging our thoughts, information to the other person, even knowledge, then one must ensure that the other person has received the message and that the message is trustworthy. So, it includes both the transference as well as the understanding of the meaning of the message. So, in other words, it is a transmission of information and is a continuous process. So, whenever we are in any group or in any organization, it is not that one information has been shared and the communication is over. It is a continuous process. We are communicating some kind of important or maybe trivial information through proper channels, so that communication gap is reduced, there is more communication, there is more sharing of information, and the organization is working in effective manner. So, why this is important? This is also very important, that what is the outcome of communication. So, whenever we are talking about this term, so communication helps in development, formation, growth and change of attitudes, stereotypes and prejudices. The more we communicate, the more the bridge is gapped between people about particular group. We tend to have wrong information about some other type of groups, we tend to have very rigid mindset for those kind of members of this group, and we maintain say a discriminatory attitude. But once we share more information about the other group, we tend to reduce these kind of discriminatory attitudes, and we have a developmental perspective for each other. Therefore, we can say that communication fosters motivation by clarifying the employees, the members, about their ideas, their vision and their roles. As we have already discussed in the previous module, that when the employees are not clear about the tasks they have to perform because of lack of communication, then it leads to ambiguity. So, that leads to communication. So, if proper communication is there, then it leads to more clarity. Secondly, that communication is also maintained through timely feedback and performances are reinforced. That means, the more the communication is fostered through feedback mechanisms, it reinforces the performances of the employees, that again that the employees tend to repeat that desirable behavior in their performances. So, they are more motivated. So, all these things require communication. Just mentioning that we should reinforce or motivate employees does not suffice. This also entails continuous sense of communication among members, where they receive timely feedback in form of positive feedback, where they are stimulated, motivated to perform, on the basis of negative feedback, where they tend to make efforts to improve their performance. Therefore, most importantly, communication is an important source of emotional expression and for the fulfillment of social need. So, even in order to maintain interpersonal relationship, it becomes very important for every member of the organization to interact based on not only having task oriented relationships, but also there is sense of affection is there, so that people have got the chance, that organization is providing that platform to the employees to communicate and express their feelings. Because it is not only that at professional front or in organizations people do not have emotions, they have emotions and they tend to share lot of feelings with their co-workers. For that we need to communicate. So, communication is an important aspect of any organization, and it provides appropriate information that individuals and groups need to make decisions by transmitting data and evaluating the alternative choice. So, it is about role of technology also, that how information is being transferred from one person to another, from one department to another, from one cell to the another cell, and it fosters appropriate decision making within organizations. So, overall communication is a very important aspect of organization in terms of managing interpersonal relationships, in form of exchanging emotions, in form of decision making, in form of role clarity, and most importantly feedback mechanism. So, what is a communication process? How this process takes on? We want to interchange some information and pass it on or transfer to the another person. It is not that we will write it on a piece of paper or we send an email and the communication is done. Within that process, how that communication has been maintained, in what manner has been maintained, that will help the other person to build that trust and understand the message in a very clear manner. So, how this process takes on? It is a process between sender and receiver, and in between sender and receiver there is some process. It is not that the sender has just initiated the message and the receiver is and the message reaches the receiver. No, from sender and receiver in between there is a process that exists in terms of creating a message, understanding the message, decoding the message, and then responding to that message. So, when we talk about this process, so the sender is the person who initiates the message, creates a message in different form and tries to send it to the receiver. So, the sender initiates a message by encoding the thought in various forms. So, there is a thought in form of a message. Now, that message is being encoded in various forms, for example, in a form of note, in a form of visual, or in form of graphic, and it is encoded. So, in that visual or graphic or note there lies the meaning in the message, and that message is being transferred to the receiver. So, the sender initiates a message by encoding a thought, that means changing that thought into a form, giving some form. It can be visual, graphic, image or visuals, and the sender makes use of symbols to convey the message and produce the required response. So, the message is the actual physical product of the sender's encoding. So, when we speak, the speech becomes a message. When we write, that writing or the text becomes a message, and when we gesture, the movement of our arms or the body becomes the message. So, we have encoded the message in some form actually. Maybe it is a written text in form of note, it can be visual in form of any image, or it can be in form of any gesture, that is body movement. So, the message, the thought has been encoded in some form. Now, that message that has been encoded will travel through the channel, that is through medium, that encoded message will travel to the receiver. So, the channel is the medium through which the message travels. The sender selects it, determining whether to use a formal or informal channel. So, if it is a formal message, it will go through a channel, maybe from top to bottom, in between different sections and departments are there, or from bottom to the top, then again it will go through proper channel from one office to the another. If it is informal, it can come directly to one person to the another, but definitely that medium has to be decided, that how that encoded message will travel through a medium to the receiver. So, the receiver is the person to whom the message is directed, who must first translate the symbols into an understandable form, and this step is the decoding of the message. So, when the encoded message through the channel, proper channel, has reached the receiver, now the receiver will try to decode that message. He will try to interpret the message, he will try to give some meaning to the message that has been received from the sender. The receiver who has the message in his hand will interpret the meaning of the message, and then the receiver will respond accordingly. So, the final link, that response, what has to be the response, it will be coming through a feedback loop. If I go to the diagram, that when the message is encoded, it is then responded through feedback. Now, feedback here is whether the message has been properly decoded and has well understood, and a trust has been created between the sender and the receiver. This is how the communication process is being complete. So, the final link in the communication process is the feedback loop. So, feedback is the check on how successful we have been in transferring our messages as originally intended, and it determines whether understanding has been achieved or not. So, this is the feedback. If the message is well understood, then we can expect that some kind of trust has been maintained between sender and the receiver. If the message was ambiguous, then the sender can give the feedback that the message is not well understood and needs more clarification. So, this is through the feedback loop that how that communication process is over. So, we can say that communication can be defined as the interchange of thoughts and information to bring about mutual understanding and confidence among group members. Now, it is not a one time process. Every now and then some kind of information is being exchanged or shared with the other members of the group, and how every time that message is being encoded, it is being transferred from through channel and reaches to the sender, and depending on the sender's interpretation of the message, the feedback will let us know that whether the information has been shared properly or not, or has been decoded or not. That is how the communication process is over. Now, what are the mediums of different kind of messages? Here we have just talked about the channel is the medium through which the message travels. So, what are those channels? Now, there is a strong influence of technology these days when we talk about message transmission mediums. For example, when we talk about verbal messages, we can transfer messages with in-person speech, phone conversations, radio, podcast, voicemail messages or intercom. These are the physical forms where we tend to encode the message and travel through different mediums. If the message is written through email, text, instant messages, report, article, essay, letter, memo, blog or tweet. So, all the different kind of channels are there to communicate any written message. So, these become the medium to convey any message or to share any message or information with the other group members. And the other is visuals. This is also very important medium of message, which is through drawings, paintings, photographs, graphic designs, body language, graphs, font types or architecture. So, this gives a different kind of messages to people where the cultural influence is also there, and at the same time people tend to decode those messages in a very clear fashion. But the point is that there are n number of channels of communication or medium of communication which travels through those channels, and ultimately the receiver can decode and give his or her feedback in terms of trust, in terms of ambiguity, in terms of clarity. This is how the communication process takes place. Okay. Next comes forms of communication. So, there can be two forms of communication, verbal and non-verbal. If we talk about verbal, then we are talking about the speech, that we are talking about the words, we are talking about the diction, we are talking about the meanings that we attach to every word that we use in the process of communication. And when we talk about non-verbal communication, it is about body gestures, it is about the kind of space we use when we are interacting with the other person in any social or in any formal or informal situation, the kind of hand movements or eye movements we make, gestures, or in terms of haptics, that is touch. How much time we also use to communicate the message, that all involves non-verbal communication. So, let us first talk about verbal communication, where we use language, where we use words. So, verbal communication is the use of words to convey a message. Verbal communication can be written and oral communication. But yes, language is there, use of proper words is there when we talk about verbal communication. What is the mode of verbal communication? What is the base of verbal communication? So, language is the base of communication which can be written and oral. So, verbal language is the most important source of communication and can be in two forms, that is phonetics and semantics. Phonetics is about the speech sound, how they are produced and the perception of speech, that is the diction, the tone, the pitch, the words we use when we are speaking. So, this is about phonetics. If we talk about semantics, it is a study of meaning of the words and phrases that people use in different languages. It is about phrases, it is about idioms that connotes or reflect certain messages hidden, and we tend to understand them and vary from culture to culture. Maybe the perception also varies, but yes, when we talk about verbal communication in form of language, it is in form of phonetics, that is in the form of speech sound, how they are produced and the perception of speech. And semantics, it is a study of meanings of words and phrases, at different languages use different words for the same thing. So, the distinction of the language used in the communication can be made on the basis of denotative and connotative meaning. So, when we talk about semantics, that means we are making an effort to understand the meaning of the word that has been used in the process of communication, what it exactly denotes. So, it is about denotative and connotative meaning. Denotative meaning, it bears a close relationship to concept formation. That means we can relate the words with any object, with a concept of the object. For example, piano. We understand, we can easily denote that what is a piano, or a gun. We can easily understand that what is a gun. We do not need to have that picture which will differentiate from any other picture of the gun. We understand this is gun, this is a firearm, or this is a blueberry or any fruit. So, this is something very much symbolic and objective in nature. So, we have that concept formation about piano and we do not have to explain anything, and we really understand the real meaning in form of denotation. So, this constitutes help to define things precisely and in a very objective manner, and there is no confusion. For example, people define car, we understand the term car. So, if I am going to any party and I will be receiving my friend over there, I can say that I will be in a green car. So, the person can easily denote that car, green car with me in a crowded place. This is about denotation or denotative meaning, where the concept is clear about the word. What is a car? Green car, it is explicitly identifiable in the crowd and person can approach me, or piano or any fire or portable firearm. We have easy and clear demarcation about this composition. The other is connotative meaning and carries deeper meaning when we use such words. So, connotative meaning refers to the wide array of positive and negative associations that most words naturally carry with them. This suggests a feeling or the main idea. For example, blue is a color. If we talk about blue as a color, so the denotative meaning is very clear, right. But when we talk about in connotative meaning, then blue color is related to sadness. So, she is feeling blue. So, this is an example, she is feeling blue, that means she is sad. So, this is about connotative meaning, the meaning we associate with the word. So, every word has a deep meaning and feeling which is related to it. Now, just now we said that these connotative meanings can have positive and negative associations. So, what are those positive associations? Words that conjure a favorable response, then that word is perceived as a positive connotation. For example, she is a very ambitious and a go-getter person. So, this is something that we are reflecting, or we are talking about the positive traits of an individual's personality, that he or she is a very positive personality, go-getter and ambitious, very hardworking, and who is someone who is very lively and curious as youthful. So, a very positive connotation we have communicated for the other person. Now, what are those negative connotations? If the same person is being evaluated, for example, the same ambitious person might be described as an overachiever, where the curious person might be referred to as childish. So, it depends on the situation that what kind of words we are using in order to convey the right form of message. If we want to convey a positive message for the other person, then we will convey it in a very different manner, where the positive connotations are used, go-getter, ambitious, hard work. If we want to convey a negative message for the third person, then we would say she is very ambitious and overachiever. She has high level of aspiration and she is something who is very very harsh in her career. So, this will give a very different meaning to the words that we are using or conveying in feedback mechanism. So, connotations play a very important role in communication because it creates, because the idea is to create a specific message, to send a specific message to the third person. So, one way to look at connotative meaning is through associative meaning, also known as expressive meaning and stylistic meaning. So, we have our understanding about the connotations and how we relate to it. For example, when we see any object, for example needle, we have different ways to express the meaning we attach to the term needle. For example, blood, pain, drugs, or even thread. So, whenever the needle is presented before the subject and asked to recall or connotate this needle with other words, subjects will come up with different kind of connotations. That is, needle is there, one would say it is I can connotate with blood, another respondent would say it will connotate it with thread, another will connotate it with pain or illness. This is connotations. Similarly, positive and negative connotations are also presented in the same manner. Another can be knitting or hard to find. So, it is based on their experiences and cultural impressions. We tend to identify, associate different kind of meanings to one particular object, or it can be a word like piano. This word can be associated with the note, with the song, with the music, or policeman is there, then we will connotate policeman with authority, rules and orders, upright and robbery, that how police can easily solve any robbery case is helpful and quick. So, we have different adjectives that individual can recall to understand any connotation that is attached to those meanings. So, that is how we say that when we talk about language or verbal communication, it is not only about semantics or phonetics, it is more about connotations, that we attach any meaning to the word and how that message is hidden in that word, be it positive or negative message. So, we are through with this verbal communication. We will talk about another form of communication, that is non-verbal communication, in the next session. Thank you so much.